Welcome back to Shout and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by my co-host John Harris as always, and we are back to share our Week 10 picks / bets, even though it's not with real money, against the spread, except for NFL Week 10. So update, just more than usual if you've been following along, but if you haven't, I guess I should fill you in specifically. So last week, John, you pulled the perfect even. You won 800 and you lost 800. Something that I aspire to attain because it was a minus 900 for me last week. Let me just put this out there this week. Not betting on the Falcons. That's my own fault for betting on the Falcons. I think twice now big. So that's on me. Yeah, that was a tough one. And then obviously Chicago, covering by half a point. They lost by 7. So that.
To be fair, who would have expected not only Jaron Hall to get hurt, but Josh Dobbs to come and save the day? Because honestly, if Hall doesn't get hurt, I don't think they put Josh Dobbs in that game, and Atlanta comes out with the win.
Agreed. But here we are. It's the NFL. Weird shaped ball that bounces in funny ways. And then obviously, I had a little more faith that the Rams would stick around, and I didn't know that Britt Breeland was that poor, unfortunately. So. Yeah, it didn't work out for you. Nonetheless, like I mentioned, minus 900 for me. In regards to just straight up record-wise against the spread, John still had the better week. You went 6-8. I went 5-9. So you're one game better than me. You are still now you're hovering a little bit under 500. You're 67-69, and I am 53-83. So simply put, 14-game deficit. I am behind on John. So big deficit spread-wise and overall-wise too. Sorry, I forgot to mention the money. John's only minus 220. So just right there once again. Just like both of your records are almost right at even in terms of just being baseline. And just like my other record, I am very much in the red money-wise. Minus 4,830. So once again, thank God this is, thank goodness this is fake money, not real money. Because like I said, I'd be extremely broke. Or less than broke. I owe money. So nonetheless, though, let's get into the picks against the spread for Week 10. Obviously, going to start with Thursday night, as always. And this one, living up to, like last week, just an encore to last week, as it is the Chicago Bears. They are the favorite at Chicago. Minus 3.5, hosting the Carolina Panthers. So, yeah, basically, like I said, an encore last week. John, who do you have here and for how much?
This game is just so gross that like as of today, Fields is doubtful to play, so it's probably going to be Bajent again. It's a gross game. And for that, I'm only going to put the standard 100. I'm going to put it on Carolina. The 3.5 for Chicago feels a little bit big. If Fields was playing, I would feel far more confident in Chicago's ability to move the ball down the field with some explosive plays, because I think he'd be good for 1 or 2 big runs, some big throws to, DJ Moore. But I just don't feel like with Bajent they're going to have that explosiveness. I feel like there's an equal percent chance that him and Bryce Young are turning the ball over at an equal rate. So I just don't really have a lean either way. I don't necessarily care that Chicago's at home. I like I said, the talent difference doesn't really feel like there is a big one. So yeah, I'm gonna take Carolina for 100.
Yeah, same. I'm taking Carolina for 100. Just feels like this will be a close, ugly game. And yeah, although Carolina's offensive line has been an issue point, and we'll see, the effect how much Montez Sweat will play. But nonetheless, Chicago's defense can be had. So I think, I don't know. Honestly, this is one we're kind of glad we got the spread, because I'm not really sure. If I had to pick someone straight up, it would be tougher than with the spread. So yeah, it's one of those where going Carolina. We expect this one to be, like you said, an ugly close one, which is why we're only putting the standard 100, because I'm pretty confident in that. It should be a slugfest, almost literally in terms of scoring. But who knows? We'll see. Thursdays are weird. I remember a couple of years ago, it was like that when Sam Darnold was on the Jets, and I forgot who was the quarterback that week for the Broncos. That was remember that game was in the 30s for both teams, and it was ugly. It was just gross in terms of just the broken plays, because Sam Darnold had a 40-yard run for a touchdown run too at one point. So wacky things happen on Thursday, so that's why none of us are betting too big on the Panthers to cover that 3.5 points against the Bears. But let's keep the funkiness going, as we're going to Sunday, the early game, another international game, although this one not as much pizzazz as last week's. at least going into it. Let me double check because I know is it in a different spot in Germany? No, it's in Frankfurt. Okay, still in Frankfurt. Nonetheless, it is the Indianapolis Colts this week. They are favored by 1.5 over the New England Patriots. So both those teams are going to Germany. That is a Germany game. So who do you have here between these two and for how much, John?
Another gross game to start off the week. We got two ugly ones. I'm taking Indianapolis here for 100. Although I don't really love either team, Jonathan Taylor is getting more and more snaps. He's had a season high in snaps last week at like 75%. So I think he could eclipse 80% this week. And I think that, him and Michael Pittman have been showing over the course of the season that they're able to consistently make plays. Josh Downs is also getting involved, and Minshew's been serviceable. So ultimately, I don't really believe in the Patriots offense and that ability to take advantage of what I feel like Indianapolis is a bit of a lesser unit. And on the other side, like I said, I believe in those Indianapolis playmakers. So I'm going to take the Colts for 100.
Yeah, I am agreeing with you. I just went back and looked. New England has not even covered against the spread since their win in Week 3 against the Jets. And
did they cover against the Bills when they beat
did
them?
Not. No.
Wow, really?
Wait, maybe I have it. Let me see.
I was gonna say I assume the Bills were the favorites. It was in New England, so maybe I'm wrong because Buffalo was at a. No, yeah, New England did. They did.
They did. Okay,
it was Buffalo minus 8.5. New England covered that week. It was Week 7.
Oh, okay. Week 7. Okay, I see. Yeah. So once again, all right, that was wrong. But, okay, so they did cover Week 7, but so my point I was getting to is I have not been able to pick any New England game right in terms of up until Week 3. They've been one of the reasons why I've been struggling. I don't know why I've been picking them. Well, I mean, I do know why. But yeah, I'm not doing it again. Going with the Colts. Just I have more confidence in their offense. And it's an offensive-driven league. And we've already mentioned how the struggles of New England and their offense. And even though there's scrutiny for the Colts defense, especially their pass defense, like we said, who really scares you for the Patriots offense? No one really. And I think that the Colts will be able to slow down the run game in terms of defense, and I'm sure that there will be an untimely / bad turnover or two from New England that will cost them this game. So I'm going with the Colts as well. I'm going with them for 150. I'm a little bit more confident and maybe a little bit spiteful towards the Patriots at this point. But we are both in agreement thus far for our first two, except this one. Like I said, I'm going 150. John's going with the Colts for 100. So a little more confidence there. Let's move on to the rest of the noon games, starting with a AFC divisional battle at Baltimore. Baltimore Ravens are the favorites. They are favored by 5.5 points, hosting the Cleveland Browns. Looks like Deshaun Watson, after made it through last game, so looks like he will be starting this one. So, John, who do you have here and for how much?
I'm taking Baltimore. I mean, we talked about it in the last episode. The heater they've been on, big win streak. I think it's 4 games, so they've been dominant. They've been blowing people out. I just looked it up too. Against the spread on the season, they are 6-3, so they're one of the best teams in the league against the spread. And Cleveland themselves are also good, 4-3-1, but they, last time they played, it was 27-0 or something like that. But they were playing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, so they didn't have Deshaun. So I expect it to be closer, but I still think there's a bit of a gap between these teams, and this one's at Baltimore. I definitely feel confident in the Ravens here. Only going to go 100 because that Cleveland defense deserves that respect. And Deshaun has been looking good when he is healthy this season. So if he can, play the game, I do think they can be competitive here. But ultimately, I do think that Baltimore comes out on top, probably by about a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I just think Baltimore, right now, especially the better team, they've been clicking on all cylinders recently. And although Deshaun Watson had a good performance last week, still got to see, him. There's still the question if he's ever going to get back to the level that he was, obviously, before Cleveland and back in Houston. And we haven't really seen that yet. And this is, like we mentioned, the top 2 defenses going at it too as well. And I mean, once again, I'm going with the quarterback I'm a little more confident in, which is Lamar Jackson. I know fantasy-wise, he hasn't been putting up the craziest numbers, but he's been extremely efficient, and they've gotten the run game going. So they found that balance that we've been looking for the past few years. And Todd Monken's been doing a great job stringing together those runs into play actions and such, like we mentioned, against Detroit especially. So I think they're gonna put Cleveland in a little bit of a bind, and like you mentioned, it's at Baltimore, and it's tough to out Baltimore. So it's gonna be a fun one, that one, for the noon slots. Let's go over to the NFC now, where the New Orleans Saints, they are favored by 2.5 going to Minnesota to play Josh Dobbs and the Vikings. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm taking the Vikings. I believe in Josh Dobbs and them. They have also been on a huge win streak, and for some reason, I just got a feeling that they continue it against this Saints team. Like, the Saints have been kind of inconsistent, especially against the spread. They haven't been that great this year. I would know because I picked them a lot. Like, even last week, they didn't cover against the Bears. They did cover 2 weeks ago, but the week prior, I don't think they covered either. So, like, against the Jags, and they were the favorite in that one. So there's just been a lot of games where, like, I've been taking New Orleans and I keep hyping up this defense and all these different things. 3 weeks ago against the Texans, Houston covers that one. So, like, I don't know. Ultimately, there's been a lot of games this year where I've continued to put my stock in New Orleans, and they've kind of burned me a little bit. Meanwhile, Minnesota, like I said, I feel like the wind that was lost when the Kirk Cousins injury happened is back because of the stuff that just happened against Atlanta with Josh Dobbs, and I think they're going to ride that momentum into this one and win one in front of their home crowd. So I'm taking the Vikings. Not going to go crazy. Another standard 100.
It's our first disagreement because I'm going with the New Orleans Saints. I'm only going with them for 25 because I do have some concerns, like you mentioned, about their consistency. Because, at times it does feel like their defense could be better, or their offense, should be playing better than it is. But I'm liking what I'm seeing in regards to mixing in Taysom Hill and short yardage situations. Adds a little bit of a different element to their offense. And, Rashid Shaheed's been getting going lately, and we just saw Chris Olave have a nice game. So, I think it's kind of coming all together for New Orleans. And while for Minnesota, I just feel like it's going to be a little bit of a letdown in regards to the whole story, all the excitement from last week. And I feel like the Saints are going to be ready for them, but it is scary because I don't know what to expect from the offense with Josh Dobbs. I mean, they did great last week. They could do good again this week when needed. I would assume New Orleans will be ready to contain his scrambles. That's been a very good part of what he's done recently. And you talk about there's a stat. He's 5 different teams the past in less than a year. This is obviously the best offensive personnel he's been with. Remember Tennessee, that was not great last season. And then Arizona, we've already talked about how Arizona's still young and not very talented on offense. And now you go to Minnesota, where although no Justin Jefferson, but you have TJ Hawkinson and Addison. That's always scary. But it will be an interesting chess match regardless on both sides of the ball. Once again, I'm going with New Orleans. I feel like they're a more well-rounded team. We'll see, obviously, because like you said, and like we all know, they've kind of been underperforming. But they've been getting the wins just against the spread. They've been unlucky. So we'll see if they pull through. Like I said, I'm only going 25. I'm learning my lesson from last week. I'm not putting big money on them, while John is going with the Vikings to at least cover and probably upset that spread or outright win for 100. So let's go over back to the AFC. This should be an interesting one. As the Cincinnati Bengals are at home, fresh off that big win against Buffalo. They are favored by 6.5, hosting the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud off that amazing game last week. Who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I am going to take the Bengals. Although I really like what I've seen out of Houston and CJ Stroud, I do think that Cincinnati's defense can cause some problems here. They got a good defensive line. I think they can get some pressure onto him. And I think he's going to have to go toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and all those guys. And as we've seen on the season, as good as Houston has been, Cincinnati has also been really, really good, finally catching their stride the last month or so. And so, I think that Cincinnati's just a little bit of a different beast, although I like Houston's ability to make it competitive. I do think they're going to come out here with the win. Cincinnati, that is. And yeah, even though it's 6.5, I think they can win by a touchdown because I just feel like ultimately the way that Joe Burrow's been playing, especially against some really good defenses like we saw, this might be a little bit of a reach, but he did, kind of dice up San Francisco. D'Amico Ryans coming from the Niners might be somewhat similar in terms of schemes. Joe Burrow's good against zone. He showed that. He's good against, teams who like to send pressure. He's shown that. And Houston's defense isn't quite as good as San Francisco's is in some of those areas. So I don't think that they're going to be able to do anything to Joe Burrow that he hasn't already seen before and been able to overcome in this last month. So a lot of words to basically say I'm taking the Bengals and putting 200 on it.
That's okay, because I'm going with Houston for only 50, because I am scared of those things you mentioned. It'll be interesting to see what Lou Anarumo and that defense throw at C.J. Stroud. They are obviously extremely talented, frustrated Josh Allen and the Bills last week, and it'll just be an interesting litmus test for Stroud in the offense. But I'm kind of riding the wave of that Houston's kind of playing high. I don't foresee them like upsetting the Bengals by any chance, so I'm kind of threading the needle here. But I wouldn't be shocked if they keep this game close. Hey, maybe it's a 10-point game, and Houston scores that touchdown, and Cincinnati just either bleeds the clock, either whether they have 2 minutes or a 5-minute whatever drive. I think it will be interesting to see how what the plan of attack is for Houston's defense. Do they learn from what the Niners did and try to do different things? Or, I'd be interesting to see what the game plan of attack is. Because, obviously they are kind of undermanned. Although Cincinnati could be undermanned as of right now, I think Higgins and Chase had some injuries pop up during the practice week. Once again, this is Wednesday, though. So who knows whether those are just minor flare-ups and they'll be fine on game day on Sunday. But nonetheless, I think Houston keeps this close. Kind of just gut feeling. But once again, I'm only putting 50, so that's it's just more of a shot in the dark. While John is more confident, he's going with the Bengals to cover that 6.5, but with 200. So another disagreement for us here. And speaking of the San Francisco 49ers, let's move on to them, as they are the favorites by 2.5 points, going to Jacksonville. So another great game in the early slot. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I am going to go with the Jags. This might surprise some people because, the Niners are really freaking good. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like Jacksonville might be able to get it done. I like the talent they have over there. I feel like Travis Etienne might be able to be the game changer here. The Jaguars have shown a dedication to running the ball, where there's been many times that, you'll tune into the Jags and they're just sitting there pounding the rock over and over and over again. And it feels like, man, like, why are you doing this? You guys aren't really getting anything. And then boom, in the fourth quarter, after they've worn you down, all of a sudden Travis Etienne is able to bust out some huge runs late in the game on some very meaningful drives. And that's very much a San Francisco-esque strategy that Doug Peterson is employing out there. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Jacksonville can maybe give them a little bit of like a taste of their own medicine and make things interesting here. So I'm going to take the Jags. It could be some, I don't know, recency bias, I guess, because the Niners have kind of not looked the greatest as of late. Meanwhile, Jacksonville is on a hot streak. I'm not exactly sure, but I got some faith in Jacksonville here. I'm going to put 100 on them.
All right. Well, third disagreement in a row. I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers. I think I still a little bit concerned about Jacksonville's offensive line. Jacksonville's offense, it's been great at moments, but haven't seen it be consistently great. And I think especially coming off the bye week for San Francisco, adding, just Chase Young just to be another guy. I feel like that front four and that front seven in general is going to cause a lot of issues for the Jacksonville offense. And I think we've already seen moments, this connection between Calvin Ridley and Lawrence, has been spotty. And, obviously, I think no Zay Jones, so it's going to be Christian Kirk still and Evan Ingram, and they're solid too. But I expect the Niners to try to bounce back. It'll just be interesting because both teams coming off a bye week too, and I'll be interested to see what, because Jacksonville's defense is quietly solid, but obviously they'll have a pretty good test going up against San Francisco's offense and Kyle Shanahan and all the things that they're going to do with that extra week of preparation. So I'm going with the Niners. I'm only going 100 because like kind of like what we're saying, probably the same reason you did, where this is should be a good game, and it'll be interesting to see how it matches up stylistically and who comes out on top. And also always scary I will say in regards in your favor, just teams going to Jacksonville, sometimes it favors Jacksonville. Just I don't know if it's the city itself or what, but sometimes that's a real effect. But nonetheless,
very humid.
Very humid, yeah. And I don't know, maybe not a destination town. Nonetheless, I don't know, I've never been there, so it's just pure speculation. But John's going with the Jaguars to either cover that or outright win against San Francisco for 100. I'm going with the Niners to cover that 2.5 points with 100 also. So standard bets for the both of us, as that should be a good matchup. Let's go over to what technically is a good matchup, but not going to be the opposite. Not going to be a great game that I will be watching, unfortunately. And it is the Pittsburgh Steelers at Pittsburgh. They are favored by 3.5 points, hosting my Green Bay Packers. What are your thoughts here, John, and for how much?
I just really feel like that defensive line for Pittsburgh is going to control the game here. And for that reason, I'm taking Pittsburgh. I've gone against them a handful of weeks. I can't remember the last time I picked them. And I was right on some of those, like when they played Jacksonville. Yeah, but like 3 weeks ago, I picked the Rams against them. I was wrong there. Last week, I picked the Titans against them. I was wrong there. So I'm just not going to do it again. I'm going to go with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. And of course, this will probably be the week that they burn me. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm going to put 100 on it.
Yeah, I'm going with Pittsburgh also. I'm only going 25 just because I don't know. Like this still could be a close game. And so Green Bay could cover by 3 points because we know how poor that Pittsburgh offense is. And the bright spot for Green Bay would be the defense, I guess. But yeah, I think ultimately, end of the day, we talk about how Pittsburgh is just so great at causing havoc, causing timely turnovers. And that has been Green Bay's one of their major bugaboos on offense is just untimely turnovers. Whether they finally get momentum, it's just bad decisions or whatnot. And yeah, like you mentioned, I don't think Green Bay's run game gets going very well against Pittsburgh, especially at Pittsburgh. And obviously we saw last week they needed that just to kind of really just to get going, and obviously needed turnovers. But to give Pittsburgh's offense credit, although they're not great, they don't turn over the ball a lot. So at least they're not putting their defense in poor positions to operate from. So yeah, I'm going with Pittsburgh also, only 25 because this game is gross, and I like I said, I don't know. It feels scary putting triple digits on Pittsburgh, especially with them being given points, or them giving points to Green Bay. Excuse me, 'cause that's how spread works. But anyways, we'll see if how that pans out, and I'll obviously be watching that one. But let's move over to Tampa Bay, where the Bucs are at home. They are favored by 0.5 point. It's basically a pickup against the Tennessee Titans, and Will Levis in the gang. Tampa Bay coming off that tough loss last week against Houston in the last few moments. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I think that although their defense got absolutely torched last week by C.J. Stroud, Will Levis is not C.J. Stroud. And I think that the defense will have a bounce back week. I do believe in, when some of these, especially some of these defenses that like this Tampa one, where you got a lot of veterans, they were previously an elite unit in the past, not too long ago. They probably feel very upset about the way that last week went. I assume they feel very responsible for the result, because when you allow 39 points and your offense scores 37, I mean, who do you blame but yourselves, right? And so I think they're going to take some pride in this week and really want to go out there and show out and, take down Tennessee in convincing fashion. And meanwhile, for the offense, although things aren't always pretty, Mike Evans make plays. Chris Godwin has been getting involved sometimes. Unfortunately, those two don't consistently get involved like at the same time. But one consistent factor is Rachaad White, whether it's Baker Mayfield having to dump it off or them giving him 20 carries. He's been producing and getting touchdowns. So I'm going to take Tampa. I'm going to put 100 on him.
I, too, am literally following your route, Tampa for 100. Right now, just a more talented team. And, it is, like you said, still a talented defense. And we know Tennessee's offense, not a lot of talent, especially on skill position outside of DeAndre Hopkins, really. And their line's shaky. And this matchup-wise is just poor, it feels like, for Tennessee. So I'm not going to expand much longer. I'm going with the Bucs also. So we're both in agreement. We're going with Tampa Bay for 100 and basically a pick 'em. But the spread being half. I think There's another game. The other game later was a pick'em. This one was a pick'em on certain, if you went to certain betting sites. So once again, not that we're really betting, but yeah. But that's why I put at technically half a point. But anyways, let's move over to the later games. I believe this one does start later, but nonetheless, it is the Detroit Lions. They are favored by 2.5 points going to the LA Chargers. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
This was just kind of a gut call. I'm going with the Chargers. I don't really have an explanation as to why. I'm just taking them. I don't know. The defense kind of impressed me last week. It was against the Jets. Far superior offensive line here for Detroit, but I don't know. I just kind of got a feeling the Chargers are maybe able to make this one competitive. I don't know if they win, but I don't know. Like I said, just kind of a gut call that I'm taking it. I'm not going to go crazy with it. I'm only going to put 100 on it, but yeah, I could see a world where this turns into maybe a little bit of a shootout.
Well, all right. If you've been following along with your pocket calculator, you must be realizing that Aaron's got some money saved up. And yeah, this is where I threw down. This is my biggest bet of the week. This might be the biggest bet.
I think this is probably your biggest
year.
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta start making money back. And this is the game I was most confident in, and I'm going with Detroit to cover against the Chargers. I'm going with it for 600. Yeah. I think inversely. I think Detroit's offensive line is going to be able to overpower the Chargers' defensive front. We've seen that's been an issue in recent years, especially their run defense. And obviously, I think that will force them to be put in binds, and Detroit will have some good play actions off that. Won't be shocked if Jared Goff has a little bit of motivation going back to LA. Just I know it's not against the Rams, but hey, it's in LA still. And then on the other side, Chargers offense, I mean, even last week, they needed some turnovers to generate points. And like you mentioned, it was against a very poor Jets offense. And I haven't seen a lot of explosive plays out of the Chargers. And Detroit, while it's not like a top-end defense, their defense has shown this year they are solid. They're not going to be run on, especially against the Chargers. The Chargers have not been able to really get their run game going as the year has gone on. It's oddly, if you look at the numbers, I feel like it's gotten worse and worse. And yeah, like we mentioned, I'm not confident in anyone that scares you, 10 yards plus down the field, really outside of Keenan Allen. But I'm sure Detroit knows that, and that will be their main focus, will be to take him away. And then who else really scares you in the passing game? No one else has it right now. As we mentioned, Quentin Johnson's still kind of figuring it out, and he hasn't really come onto the scene maybe like some would have hoped. So, yeah, I'm just extremely confident in Detroit right now, and I think, yes, just matchup-wise, this is just does not favor the Chargers at all. So, yeah, I'm going with Detroit. I'm going with them for 600 to cover the 2.5 points. John is going with the Chargers for 100. So in before it is a shootout, and I'm sitting here sweating on on Sunday, and yeah, it comes down to the wire. So that'll be fun. But let's move on to a full NFC matchup, and it is the Atlanta Falcons. Looks like it's going to be Taylor Heineke starting again. They are favored by 1.5 points going to Arizona to play the Cardinals. Looking like it's going to be Kyler Murray's first start of the year, fresh off that ACL injury. So that will be very exciting. So that adds a little bit of, intrigue into this one, because you don't really know what we're going to get out of Kyler in that offense with the new system. So how do you feel about this one, John? And for how much?
I am just so done with Arthur Smith that I'm taking the Cardinals in hopes that they can beat him and get him out of town. So I'm taking Arizona for 10.
Yeah. So, this is a tough one. I went with Atlanta for 50 just because a little bit known commodity, and I expect for them to bounce back from last week. I'm sure, despite Arthur Smith, I'm sure he will still find, and the guys in the locker room will still be wanting to bounce back and just improve off of, losing to the backup quarterback that arrived days before last week. Right. I'm sure that they'll have a bit of emphasis on that, and same on offense. Won't be shocked if, Arthur Smith's, I think, starting to feel that criticism, and maybe he does cater, okay, let me start, getting these plays for getting the ball more in the Bijan / Kyle Pitts hands. I don't know. It seems like if there's ever a time, Arthur, it's now, because you're at 4-4. You really need to start making a playoff push.
4-5.
4-5, excuse me. So that's even worse. You're sub 500, and you're probably only going to, although I don't know the NFC picture, but you're likely going to need to get in via winning the division. You prefer it that way. So if there's ever a time, Arthur Smith, now is the time. Especially because I won't be shocked if he's starting to get on the hot seat. Although I don't know how the front office feels. So I'm not extremely confident either. I'm going with Atlanta for 50. John is going with the Cardinals for 10. So we're both a little unsure about what we're going to see here and the results. So that will be interesting. Battle in the desert. But keeping it on the West Coast, let's go over to Seattle, where the Seahawks are at home and they are favored by 6.5 points, hosting the Washington Commanders. How do you feel about this one, and for how much, John?
Taking Seattle. I just think they're the better team. It's in Seattle. Sam Howell's been sacked a ton. I feel like Seattle's defensive line is like the one thing that people have, fairly been critical of. And, against this Washington offensive line, even Seattle's got an advantage. So, I'm going to take Seattle here. Put 100 on it.
Gotcha. I'm in agreement. Washington, all their offense and Sam Howell have been good. It's kind of been one-dimensional. They haven't really been able to run the ball and have balance. And, I think Seattle will be able to cause havoc, whether it be some sacks. Maybe won't be shocked if a strip sack, fumble of sort. And Sam Howell's been good, but it just feels like he's due. He's always going to be due for that one or two poor decisions because they have to throw a lot. And then on the flip side, I would expect Seattle's offense to figure it out, especially like we've mentioned against a Washington defense that, yes, they had a good week last week, but that was against New England. And Seattle does have more talent. And I would expect for them, especially after getting beat down by Baltimore, to once again also want to bounce back from that poor performance, especially from Geno and the passing attack and even the running attack too. Wouldn't be shocked if maybe many in the fantasy world are feeling that this may Zach Charbonnet maybe get more touches. Regardless, I think it'll be a motivated offense. So I'm going with Seattle as well, only for 50 though, because just who knows with these two. And Seattle's been, especially their offense, has been inconsistent. But John also going with Seattle for 100 as well. So both banking on Seahawks there to handle their business against the Commanders by at least 7 points or more. But let's go over to the last game. And unfortunately, it's looking like it may be the least in terms of intrigue and excitement, as it is your game, your Dallas Cowboys, and it's not their fault because they are the favorite. They are favored by 16.5 points as of right now, Wednesday. Who knows? That line goes probably up. I doubt it goes down against the New York Giants, and Tommy DeVito will be the starting quarterback. So who do you have here? Basically, John, do you think the Cowboys can cover or not?
Yeah, I think they can. I'm taking Dallas. The 16.5 doesn't even feel big enough, to be honest, which is kind of crazy. They beat them 40-0 the last time these two teams played, and I can't see a world in where Tommy DeVito and this offense are really able to do much against this Cowboys team. Dallas has a defense that is built to destroy bad quarterbacks and bad offensive lines. Because of the amount of pressures they get, it's just crazy, and I don't really think that's going to change this week. I'm taking Dallas. I'm putting 200 on it.
Yeah, I'm taking Dallas, putting 250. Only other thing I want to add to on top of what you said about their defense too is what receiver scares you. So I feel like Dallas is going to be very comfortable living in man-to-man or single safety situations if they want to, and just wreak havoc.
They do that a lot.
So they're going to wreak havoc and against poor Tommy DeVito and the Giants. Offensive line. So we're both in agreement. Dallas will cover that spread. I almost thought about getting some of that 600 initially and putting it there, but once again, 17, you never know. Maybe it's somehow 24/7 and then Dallas 6. I don't know, but Dallas has also been not known to take their foot off the gas pedal against some of these guys. So nonetheless, you never know. John going with Dallas for 200. I'm going with them for 250 to cover. Let's move on to the Sunday night game, which matchup-wise is better, obviously, as the spread indicates, as it is the New York Jets. They are the favorites only by half a point. Like I said, this is the other game that was technically a pick'em for other, spreads and such, depending on where you went. So, nonetheless, it is at Las Vegas Raiders. Like I mentioned, they are the underdogs. So, who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm taking the Jets. I'm putting 280 on them. I had a about 200 on them, and then I had leftover points, and I put it on this game. At a pick'em, I like the Jets. I think they're the better team. I don't really believe in the Raiders' offense. I don't think that Josh Jacobs is going to be able to do much against that defensive line. I think it's going to be another frustrating day for Devontae Adams and co. as Sauce and that secondary are going to be able to kind of, do whatever they want, to be honest. And I don't really see a way in which the Raiders are able to put up major points. And although I don't love the Jets' offense, I think that Breece Hall and that offense is certainly good enough to at least win the game. And that's really all they got to do here. So I am taking the Jets for 280.
I am also taking the Jets. I'm not as confident on going them for 25, only because the Jets' offense hasn't been impressive, and I'm just hoping that the game plan is, hey, where's Max Crosby? Let's not, especially if we're running the ball, let's not go towards him. Let's just go the other way, and just don't let Max Crosby wreck this game, which is easier said than done, especially with their offensive line. But yeah, I expect even on the flip side, obviously Jets' defense is going to be better than Giants, and they'll have I wouldn't be shocked too on regards to the Vegas offense come back to earth a little bit too against that defense. Maybe have less of the boost of we got the witch is gone from the building. Josh McDaniels, another week removed from that, so I feel like that little boost will go down. And then I would expect the Jets offense I would expect for them to have some answers and some creative ways to move the ball, get some chunk plays, and just be a little more disciplined than last week, or Monday night, excuse me. Which was last week, and just put together a more efficient, better performance. And like the Raiders, people forget, once again, Danny Dimes got hurt against last week against them pretty early, and it was pretty much night, and so that did help inflate their blowout win against the Giants, was the fact that the Giants just stink, for the lack of a better phrase, while the Jets are still kind of obviously a 500 team. They have talent, they just got to put it all together, especially on offense. But we're both going Jets. John, much more confident, going with the Jets for 280. I'm only putting 25 on the New York Jets to basically beat the Las Vegas Raiders at Las Vegas. But let's move on to the final game, the Monday Nighter. It will be at Buffalo, where the Bills are favored by 7.5 points, hosting the Denver Broncos. Who do you have here, John, and for how much?
This game's tough because Buffalo just has not really looked convincing, even in the wins that they've been getting. I mean, on the year against the spread, they're 3-6. They have not been that good. And for that reason, I'm going Denver. The 7.5 feels big. I mean, the last time Buffalo had a big spread was, that 8.5 against New England? And they didn't cover that one. So I don't really feel confident in Buffalo to be able to handle some of these big spreads yet. I'm willing to be wrong and then come back to Buffalo. Actually, not only did they not cover the 8.5 against New England, they had 8.5 against Tampa Bay the very next week, and they didn't cover that one either. So yeah, I'm willing to be wrong on Buffalo. I'm willing to see them do it before I'm going to come back on the train with them, because simply put, when they're getting these big spreads, they have not proven to me that they're able to actually cover it, even against some teams that are not that great. And Denver, we've seen, they have moments. They beat Kansas City. They're not the best team, but they can be competitive. And I do think that this could be a week in which, because of the way the Buffalo run defense has been since, the Matt Milano injury, which is very bad. This Buffalo run defense has been terrible. They're allowing 6 yards a carry. This could be a week in which Javonte is heavily featured for Denver, and we've seen his snaps and target share and all these kind of things increase, and so he could get a lot of work this game, and I think that he could have a lot of success. So I could see a world in which Denver is even able to win this game, but also just in general make it competitive. So I'm taking Denver. That said, I don't always feel confident taking Denver, and Buffalo is still a very good team offensively. They can score a lot if they get the right matchups, and so I'm only going to put 10 on the Broncos.
I'm in agreement. I'm going with Denver to at least cover. I'm going with 25 because that's what I had left over, basically. But yeah, I think even Buffalo's offense, I have questions about, like we've mentioned, and I think Denver's going to go in with a similar approach that many of these other teams have, which is, hey, let's not let the deep pass beat us. Pass rush. Let's contain Josh Allen within the pocket. Don't let him scramble for 10, 20 yards or, find a guy downfield because he bought more time. And yeah, obviously double digs. And who else is going to beat us? And we know that Buffalo's not really going to run the ball because they just aren't good at running the ball right now. And then you mentioned on the flip side, like that's kind of been Denver's MO more and more, whether it be Javonte Williams, which hopefully he does get a lion's share of it. But hey, Jaleel McLaughlin's been a good change of pace guy for them too. And Russell Wilson's taking care of the ball. And there has been a little bit of a flow, especially in crucial moments for this offense. And they've been better, buttoning up the turnovers and such. So, yeah, I think they kind of muck the game up, make Buffalo just be patient. I won't be shocked if Buffalo still wins. But, yeah, I think I'm with you, basically. I think Denver keeps us close. And I wouldn't be shocked if they somehow pull off the upset because it's maybe it's another week where Allen and Diggs can't get going or, can't get going and no one else is really contributing. And, Denver wins an ugly one because they still got talent on offense as well. So, yeah, we're both in agreement towards the end, especially with this one. John going with Denver for 10. I'm going with Denver for 25. So we are picking the upset, but not fully investing in it. So nonetheless, that should be an interesting matchup just to see, how the Bills bounce back from a few poor performances, like John mentioned this year, especially from the offense and then that injured defense. But those are our picks against the spread for Week 10. Obviously had 4 teams on bye. Let me make sure I'm not missing a game because I always tend to do this. I know it's Browns, Ravens, and extra Titans, Bucks. Am I miscounting on the spreadsheet? 1, 2, 3, 4. I may have miscounting. Sorry. Yeah, that's 14. Sorry. So, but the 4 teams on bye are Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, Eagles. So, if you don't, I'm sure as many fantasy owners know it's a tough week in terms of that. So hopefully you find your replacements. But nonetheless, that will do it for John and myself. Unless there's anything else you wanted to throw in.
Gonna be it.
All right. So that'll do it for both of us. As always, feel free to rate, review, and comment. But we'll be back next week, obviously, to share our reactions to Week 10. Hopefully I can just have a positive week, but obviously
if you hit the Lions, you got to have a positive.
I was about to say that's
right?
basically it. That's basically I have to really. The Lions one's a huge one. That's definitely the one.
Because if you can hit that, there's no way you get like every game wrong after that. Because that's the only way. If you hit that one, you still go negative, right? So,
well, you'd be surprised. So, what I can accomplish. But yeah, that hopefully should be it. We'll see. But
if you hit that one and got every other game wrong, I would also get every single game wrong except for 4. So, I wouldn't be doing much better because we only have 5 disagreements. I'd get the 4 other disagreements, correct, but everything else would be wrong. So, I don't want that to happen either.
At the end of the day, you'd have more money than me. Still,
total,
in total.
In that specific one, if you got that 600, my other 4 disagreements, I would get 410. Total. So, you'd beat me in that case.
Finally. But we'll see. Obviously, we'll see if Detroit pulls through for me. I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be putting all my money, theoretical money, not real money, on Detroit. Because I still wouldn't do that.
Jared Goff to just throw a pick 6 and backdoor cover for the Chargers.
Yeah, that will be unfortunate, but I can always see that happening. But nonetheless, hope you all enjoy your weekend. Hope you enjoy